Good morning. My name is Sally Anderson, and I'm going to go ahead and just get started here. Hopefully, we'll have some people join us, and if not, perhaps folks will take a look at this wonderful module afterwards. So let's see. Sorry about this. It looks like my screen wasn't quite ready. All right, so this is the #1 module in the Nurturing with Nature Parenting series. And today's topic is vitamin N, why nature is important to the development of young children. It's a really important topic today more than ever before. And this particular project is a collaboration between the City of Albuquerque Parks and Recreation, the Open Spaces Division, as well as Nature Niños, which is a program of the New Mexico Wildlife Federation. So wanted to share that from the outset. In our information about this series, this is pretty much the description of what we are offering. So I'm going to go ahead and read it. And if you're here, hopefully listening, this is what you're signing up for. The Nurturing Your Young Child with Nature series is for families with young children who are just learning to explore nature and the outdoors together, either because they did not experience an outdoor childhood themselves, or because they've now got their own young children and they wish to provide a childhood rooted in the awe and wonder of the natural world. It is also for parents who embrace the idea of slowing down childhood by minimizing screen time and maximizing connection, all while enjoying the simple pleasures of being a child. Childhood should be about the predictable routines and rituals, enjoying books and stories together, having the time to drop into deep, nurturing play, picnics in the park, walks in the neighborhood, worm hunting and puddle splashing, getting a consistent dose of vitamin N, which means vitamin nature, if you're not familiar with that term. And most importantly, joyful and playful connection to nature and the adults who care for us on a daily basis. Throughout this series, we will aim to get you thinking about how you, as a parent, can use nature as a guide, tapping into the wonder that all young children possess for the natural world. We will also provide you with a multitude of ideas and activities that will assist you in growing your own Nature Niño, fresh from your own backyard. So, some expectations for this series. Please join the Zoom meeting at the designated start time, which is 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. And we'll have microphones automatically muted and what have you, but there should be some time for sharing. We'd like for you to enter your name and your email into the chat box so that we could be sure to add you to our course evaluation email list. We would also like for you to use your chat and raise hand functions to share questions and comments, and also understand that we'll save time for group discussions towards the end of the hour. We would like to invite you to try to join us from a safe and comfortable outdoor setting, alone or with your Nature Niño, safely playing nearby. We'd also like to invite you to consider carving out time for yourself by participating in this series. We understand that parenting now during this COVID pandemic can be extra stressful and challenging. Nature is your and our ally though, so we hope that you'll join us, and nature will also provide you with physical and mental health benefits that will sort of assist you along this parenting path. Please check your email and your Facebook page for any follow-up activities or topic sheets that we'll share following the live modules. And the Zoom link and password will remain the same for all the modules. So if you've joined one, you are able to join all the others. And finally, we encourage you, please, to actually join us for the Nature Niños Rewilding Childhood Revolution. I've just seen something pop up on my screen, so before I pop onto this next thing, I wanted to make sure, okay, I thought perhaps someone else had joined. So this is the plan. These are the dates for the additional modules. Today is Sunday the 17th. Next Sunday, we will be doing a module on garden goodness, growing with the young child in mind. The 14th of June is Wonderful Play, and we'll learn about how play is much more than just going to the park. June 28th, we'll be looking at backyard adventures and designing on a dime. So really simple things that you can do to encourage nature as well as adventurous, soul satisfying play in your own backyard. July the 12th, we'll be looking at hiking and exploring with littles. So wandering and wondering together. And then the final series day, the final module is called Acorns to Oak Trees, how being nurtured by nature grows stewards. So we'll talk about, how important it is to be doing this kind of thing with our children now. And if we've got enough participation throughout the series, we'll also do some community storytelling and sharing. So it's going to be lots of fun. This is a little bit about me. My name is Sally Anderson. I am a 30-year education veteran. I have worked primarily in early childhood education and early intervention through the special ed and deaf education lens. That's been the majority of my work. I have been an educational administrator, a principal, and I have been practicing what I refer to as nature and place-based early childhood education for probably close to 10 years now. And then if I add my mama's hat, my one and only, my single child, Odin, will be 17 in June. So pretty much for a very long time. I also worked as an outdoor educator way back when and worked for the National Wildlife Federation in my 20s. So nature has always been a big part of my personal as well as my professional life. I have nearly 2 master's degrees. I am a forest and nature schools certified practitioner through Forest Schools Canada. This means that I've received very intense and special training around the delivery of nature and place-based early childhood education with littles. I'm also a Tinkergarten leader. I do something called Shinrin Yoku Forest Therapy that I'm certified through the Association for Nature and Forest Therapy, and I primarily work with adults in that realm, sort of helping them to remember what it's like to be a 5-year-old again. And I'm wilderness first aid trained. So I have a pretty rich experience related to this work, and it really is my passion, nature and early childhood. I worked in the past for many years for the New Mexico School for the Deaf and founded what's called the Forest Day Learning School or Forest Day Learning Program. And it's the first forest school inspired program for children who are deaf and hard of hearing in the world. And a little later, we'll be hearing from a parent who actually still has a child that attends NMSD. I founded in 2017 Soul Forest School part-time, which is based in the mountains east of Albuquerque, and aims to bring 3 to 7-year-olds out into the forest for tree school learning. I also work through Prescott College part-time, their what's called Summer Institute on Nature and Place-Based Early Childhood Education. I have some contracts with the city of Albuquerque, Open Spaces, and I am the early childhood coordinator for Nature Niños. So I've got a lot on my plate, but I love it all. I am first and foremost a nature lover and a nature mama. You will meet my little guy, not so little anymore, in a moment. And I like to describe myself more than anything else, more than any other way, as a guardian of childhood. Hopefully, as we go through these modules, what will become really clear is not only am I advocating for children to have access to the natural world as they're growing up, but I'm also advocating for children's right to deep, meaningful play, to adventure, to risky and challenging play and all kinds of good old-fashioned stuff that used to be the norm back in the day. So here's my guy. This is a new series, and I wanted to speak today a little bit more through my mama's lens than anything else. So this is Odin Anderson. Odin's father, my husband Forrest, is actually from Minnesota. So from a very early age, we had him outside and in very cold temperatures, no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing, all bundled up. And in his early childhood years, for several years, we lived in New Zealand. We've lived in several places overseas, but this was the one time with Odin that we lived overseas, and he really kind of became a person while we were living in New Zealand. And their early childhood programs there are absolutely, positively some of the best in the world. They're very much focused on the natural world and the outdoors. So this is a very little Odin playing on a beach. And there will be a sprinkling of pictures from him. What I hope in the future is that I will have some pictures from our Nature Niños families out there, and I'll replace these, but I thought it would be kind of fun today to just share some pictures of my little guy outdoors in nature. There he is again. So what I invite you to do now, just for 1 or 2 moments, is to just kind of sit back and let's just take a few breaths. And if you're comfortable, I'm going to ask you to just close your eyes for a moment and think about the 3, 4, 5-year-old self. If you don't have memories of being quite that young, maybe a little bit older. And then I invite you to just remember a fond outdoor childhood experience. Maybe it was going on camping trips in the summertime, or visiting a cabin or something like that was in the family. Maybe it was going to the local swimming pool and just enjoying the sun on your back all day long, sitting on the grass and having a snack. Perhaps it was playing in a sprinkler, chasing, trying to catch butterflies. I think for most of us, if we take a moment to really think back, something will come to mind. For me personally, it's always the first memory that comes to mind is making mud pies in my backyard. I grew up very feral in the rolling green hills of northern New Jersey to European parents, and I spent a lot of time in our wooded and forested backyard and had just a perfect rock, a boulder that had a flat top, and I could make mud pies till the cows came home. Probably that and catching lightning bugs, which we don't see in New Mexico, but in New Jersey on the East Coast, there were many of them. I would catch those in the summertime. And then I have a lot of fond memories of playing in creeks and going down the shore, which is what people from Jersey say for going to the beach. So yeah, I'm kind of wondering, as you think back, how did recalling this memory actually make you feel? And going back to that moment, how do you think you felt then while fully embodying the actual experience of being out in the natural world? I'm going to venture a guess that you felt pretty good. And I'll have to say, even talking out loud and hearing my own voice and reliving those memories as I was sharing them, kind of brought a peace and calm to me, as well as an appreciation and a feeling of awe. Rachel Carson is probably one of the first people who really spoke to a sense of wonder in early childhood and how important it is that every child have access to the natural world and at least one adult to walk that path with them. And this is one of my favorite quotes, and I believe it to be true. If I had influence with the good fairy who is supposed to preside over the christening of all children, I should ask that her gift to each child in the world be a sense of wonder so indestructible that it would last throughout life as an unfailing antidote against the boredom and disenchantment of later years, the alienation from the sources of our strength. Okay, so that was a nice pick-me-up, and I think many of us can speak to the fact that nature is so good for us. But here's some pretty depressing facts to share. Childhood today, we're really kind of in a dire situation. Modern American children are growing up inside of a box. The average American child spends 7 to 10 hours a day on screens versus 7 minutes a day outdoors in unstructured play. Let me say that again, 7+ hours on a screen versus 7 brief moments outdoors. This is not a good situation. This is a dire situation. While sports do get kids outside, and a lot of parents will say, oh, my kids play soccer, my kids do this, my kids do that. That is fabulous. We are in the sunshine, but it's totally different than being in nature. Sports are intrinsically adult-centered and adult-led, so the child is not really getting an opportunity to drop into free and open play. And they almost always take place on a very flat surface, and particularly when we're young and we are learning how to be mobile, to move around. There is a lot of research showing that young children, more than ever, because they are pretty much always in a manufactured environment, they are having some real issues with their motor skills. Like, for instance, there is a crisis of kindergartners or pre-K students in programs indoors, of course, when we are able to operate indoors, and they're falling off their chairs because they do not have the trunk or the core strength to sit up straight. So we need and can do better than a sports playing field. School recess, unfortunately, is actually headed towards extinction. The CDC reports that 4.5 million children between 5 and 17 years old have been diagnosed with ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. This actually, research is showing though that this may actually be more a case of what author Richard Louv calls NDD, which stands for nature deficit disorder, than actually being ADHD. More and more evidence is showing that if we get children out, many of the issues that we are seeing, the health issues we are seeing with children these days, actually self-corrects. Myopia, which is related to our farsightedness, is on an all-time high. So there's more and more children who are basically needing to wear eyeglasses because their world is screens, things are very up close, and they're not getting that experience of the 3D outside and in nature. Approximately 18.5% of children ages 2 to 19 years of age are obese, affecting about 13.7 million children and adolescents. Childhood obesity has doubled over the past 30 years for preschoolers and adolescents, and more than tripled for children ages 6 to 11 years old. Asthma and diabetes rates are at all-time highs, and there are increasingly more children with risk factors for hypertension and cardiovascular disease. And 70%, which is roughly 58.4 million of US children and adolescents, have insufficient levels of vitamin D, which research is now showing is leading to, believe it or not, levels of hypertension and cardiovascular disease in our children. So considering these facts, shouldn't we be concerned about how a lack of nature actually affects our children's mental, emotional, and spiritual health as well? If these are just the physical facts, it's pretty daunting. Some more pictures of Odin, and hi, Allison, glad you're here. We don't have many people on this first call, but that's okay. We're going to hear from Allison in a little bit. She's going to tell us about her lovely Leela. So, moving away from those kind of depressing facts, let's just talk about the benefits of nature. So, you know, there is a multitude of champions out there who actually know and believe that getting children outdoors is really, really important. So the American Academy of Pediatrics has a statement: 60 minutes of daily unstructured free play is essential to children's physical and mental health. 60 minutes. Remember a moment ago, I mentioned that the average American child is just getting 7 minutes a day outdoors. So 60 minutes would be quite an increase. However, if you look back to my childhood, like in the 70s, I was out far more than 60 minutes a day, far more than 60 minutes a day. The National Association for the Education of Young Children, in their official policy statement, actually mentions that play is an active form of learning that unites the body, mind, and spirit. And we know that outdoor play really lends itself even more easily to this mind, body, spirit connection. And then just as a happy note, you know, living in a world right now, and particularly in a country where we are, it seems, more divided than ever, politically, philosophically, in all kinds of ways. In February of last year, there was a full bipartisan passing of Every Kid Outdoors Act, which is hugely exciting. The Every Kid in a Park Act has been around for a while, and that aims to get every fourth grader out with their families to state and national parks. You can get actually a pass to do this. And this act goes further and actually permanently authorizes the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which will allow funding basically for close to home, quote unquote, close to home projects, parks, playgrounds, things like this. So in my way of thinking, in this world where we are very divided and we tend to disagree on many counts, one thing that I feel really passionately can actually bring us all together is nature. We all need nature and we all benefit from access to the outdoors. And it doesn't matter what walk of life you come from or what ethnic group, if you trace it back far enough, you will find that, you know, your tribe, your people, your group came from a land-based culture. So it really is how we are wired, I believe, to be in the world. More of Mr. Odin, getting a little older here. Okay, so let's talk about the benefits. And I decided to go with the very broad focus of body, mind, and spirit. And I've got the resources noted towards the end of this, this presentation. Much of this body, mind, spirit comes from a man called Scott. I'm forgetting his last name, Jameson or Jansen, something like that. I've got it in my notes here. Oh, sorry, Sampson, Scott Sampson. And he is actually the president and the CEO of a place called Science World, British Columbia. He's got a TED Talk that I have linked towards the end. And he really succinctly, for me, describes the benefits of getting children out into nature. And he's an interesting guy because he's quite a scientist. He's actually a paleontologist, but he feels really, really passionate about this subject. So check out that TED Talk later. So of course, the lists of benefits could be as long as my arm. So we've just got a few here to go through under each of those three categories. Outdoor play increases fitness levels and builds active, healthy bodies, an important strategy in helping the 1/3 of American kids who are obese get fit. Spending time outside raises levels of vitamin D, helping protect children from future bone problems, heart disease, diabetes, and other health issues. Being outside improves distance vision and lowers the chance of nearsightedness. So that myopia I was speaking about before. Frequent time outdoors has been proven to boost immunity by increasing our natural killer cells. My work in the Shinrin-yoku force therapy has really brought to my attention a lot of research, increasing evidence that there really is something to being under the trees that prepares us to fight off illness. And this is obviously hugely, hugely important in this COVID world that we're living in right now. So nature benefits for our mind. Exposure to natural settings may be wildly effective in reducing ADHD symptoms. As I mentioned earlier, I know from my work, particularly at the New Mexico School for the Deaf, many of the children that we serve there, I'm not there anymore, but when I was working there, are deaf, but they also, in addition, have other impacting diverse abilities, other conditions. Several of the children, they're a bit young to be diagnosed as actually being ADHD, but there are a few that come to mind that I won't be surprised, sadly, if that diagnosis comes along at some point. And boy, oh boy, getting them out into the forest. I'm thinking of one boy where the teacher, her jaw just dropped because she had never seen, he was probably close to 4 at this time. She had never seen him attend so well as he did one day out in the snow with some big giant frozen snowballs that he was really engaged in transforming in all kinds of ways. In a 2010 National Wildlife Federation survey of 2,000 educators, 78% of those educators said that children attend and concentrate better when they're allowed daily unstructured outdoor playtime. And a further 75% also reported increased creativity and problem-solving skills in their students. A 2003 study showed that in schools with environmental education programs, students outperformed their peers that were not part of environmental ed programs in standardized tests of math, reading, writing, and listening. Nature benefits, spirit. We don't speak enough about spirit in our secular world, I suppose. And this slide in and of itself could be several slides long, and it's a hugely important piece for me because I have seen this part really be impacted, and I think personally it's what's sort of missing from mainstream education. And these are some really just sort of superficial facts, but children's stress levels fall within minutes of seeing green spaces. Play protects children's emotional development, whereas loss of free time in a hurried lifestyle can contribute to anxiety and depression. We have more and more children being diagnosed with anxiety and depression in the United States every day. Nature makes you nicer, enhancing social interactions, which it also helps for closer community and other connections and relationships. Okay, so Scott Sampson, who I mentioned earlier in his TED Talk, when he talks about what a parent can do now to actually embrace nature, and I like to say how to work with nature as your co-parent, he uses the acronym Embrace the New. And this is really easy to remember, which is why I appreciate it. So the N for new is all about noticing. Every single day we walk past the miraculous, quite literally. A spider's web, pictures in the clouds, flowers about to bloom. The list goes on and on. So some things that you can do as a parent to help you notice, remember, notice, is if you're a big technology person, you can actually use things on your phone like geocaching, iNaturalist. There's many apps that you can use on your phone to help you slow down and notice nature. And be thinking about balancing your screen time with green time. I think that's really, really important. A simple thing that you can do with your littles or even yourself and bring them into the loop later on is to begin your day with 1 minute outside together. I realize even this sometimes can be hard if people are waking up at different times, but you could particularly now, you could take breakfast outside or lunch outside. It doesn't have to be at the start of the day. Even quite frankly, if you are getting ready to leave your home and as you are walking to the car with your littles, you stop and in your mind, you count just to 10 and you look around, look up at the sky, see what kind of clouds are present. Listen, see how many sounds you can hear. Look, open your eyes and just do a quick scan of what's around you. This is such a simple thing that can really go very, very far. With Nature Niños, each Monday on our Facebook page, we post a mindful moment. These are really wonderful invitations to just take a moment or two, no more than 5 really, with your Nature Niños, your little ones, and just sort of drop into the now and the natural world, which is really all around us. This can be happening from your front porch or your backyard or what have you. Keeping a family nature journal is a really fun idea, and I will make sure after we post this module to also post a resource page, and I've got a few connections to some templates for some nature journals. So those are just a few ideas for that N for notice. Getting bigger now, my boy is. So the E is engage. So the top of this list is encouraging full body engagement when you're outdoors and in nature with your child. Of course, this needs to be age appropriate. So we're talking about for a really little one, like a baby or a toddler, it might be as simple as having a stick and splashing it in a puddle, or sitting and quietly looking up at the tree canopy and maybe noticing a bird. Walking on some grass that you know is safe. It can be really, really simple. Then as children get older and they're more eager and able to incorporate new skills, you might do something like fishing, teach them how to fish, or how to go skiing or snowboarding, snowshoeing, maybe some primitive life skills. I know my son, for a few summers, he went to a particular camp where they learned how to make fire the old-fashioned way, things like that. So really thinking about that full body sort of engagement. Watch your nose and be careful. Most parents, without even being conscious of it, as they do let their children get the 7 minutes outdoors, or hopefully more, will quite easily, and this is true for all of us, quite easily go to that place of no, or be careful. And if you think just of that phrase, be careful, with a young child, think about how cryptic and how confusing that phrase is. Be careful of what? Suppose they're walking along the length of a log. Be careful of what? Do you see a snake or an insect? Are you talking about the little bit of ice that's still on the log? Are you talking about my balance? I'm not very, it's too broad. It's much better to be thinking about providing your child with really specific terminology. If you're concerned as they're playing outdoors, like watch your feet, think about your next move. What are you going to do to keep yourself safe? These kinds of things. And when we get to the module about designing on a dime and looking at our backyard play spaces and how we could bring in more adventure and quote risky play, we'll get quite a bit more into this topic. But I would encourage you to be thinking about that now. What, your words are really strong. They carry a lot of weight with your child. So be thinking before those no's and those be carefuls come flowing out. And I would encourage you too to be the hummingbird parent versus the helicopter parent. We've all heard what a helicopter parent is. The helicopter parent is the one, and don't get me wrong. I want to say really clearly that every parent, I believe, is trying their very best. And every parent is the exact best parent for their child. But we do have a trend in our culture where we sort of bubble wrap our children and we overprotect them. And we collectively often will be the helicopter parent where we've always got our nose in their business. We're always checking what they're doing. We overstep, we kind of do things for them, et cetera, and so on. Rather, I invite you to be the hummingbird parent, where you sort of flit in and provide support and encouragement where need be. And then you kind of flit out, and as your child gets older, you sort of increase your distance and your time away from them. And I know that there often can be challenges, that this is not, this is easier said than done, because I know for my own self, as a parent of a single child, I was my child's playmate, for many, many years. But still, I would try my best, particularly when big questions or things like that came along. I would try to keep things open so that he came to his own knowings and his own understandings. And, there's many more things, again, that could be on this list, but these are just some ideas to get people started. So now to the W, wonder. In my experience of working with young children in nature, this comes so easily for young children. And I've got to tell you, I am beginning to think more and more that wonder is a superpower. It's truly a superpower. And if you think about it, as adults, if we can be in that place of wonder ourselves, wonder is opening. Wonder leaves room for questions. Wonder admits that we don't know the answer to everything. Wonder, in my opinion, is non-judgmental and completely open to possibilities. It's a really great headspace and heart space to be in. And it comes so easily for little ones. And this is probably the reason why I have stepped into this work with young children full time, because as an educator of 30 years, I was really seeing a lack of joy in children. And once I started 10 years ago introducing more and more nature practices, I was really seeing the joy return with the children as well as the adults in their world, teachers, educators, and parents. And to me, that really speaks to this sense and this feeling of wonder that I think we need as humans to keep going. So how can we bring more wonder into the lives of our nature niños? Well, we can share amazing stories, share your stories of your childhood, and particularly the exciting stories of adventures, of travel and being outdoors. Share stories of the land. I think it's really great to know a little bit about the people who lived in the places we live, who inhabited these places, particularly in New Mexico, where Nature Niños is based. We have a rich First Nations, First Peoples, Native American culture here, and understanding and knowing the stories of the land and their creation stories can really lend to wonder. If you tell a young child about the creation story of the whole world being founded on turtle's back, like, wow, right? Like, how can that not be exciting for a young child to hear? There's also a multitude of nature books that you can share, and many of these you can find just on YouTube, but I will make sure in the resources to give you a list of, I think what I found has 30 storybooks that you can read. Share amazing experiences with your child. Get them out to places. One of those pictures we flipped through was our family went to the Grand Canyon a few summers ago, and we've been meaning to go and meaning to go and meaning to go and sort of didn't want to go because the time we could go was the summertime and we knew it would be cooking hot. But we finally took our son Odin, I think it was about 4 years ago. So he was 12, 13, and he remembers it so poignantly. slow down and really notice. So going back to that N, the really noticing is completely connected to the wonder, but we have to slow down long enough to do it. Take your nature niños to amazing places. I just sort of mentioned that with the Grand Canyon, places near and far. The Scott, who is the CEO that I mentioned earlier of the program in British Columbia, who did that wonderful TED Talk, he shares the story of his mother when he was a young child, knowing of a nearby pond and a particular time of year. It was like in the space of sort of a day, the tadpoles would boom, become little itty bitty frogs, and they'd just be jumping everywhere. So one particular year, she was able to time it just perfectly. And she brought him to this pond to show him this. And he said he was about 5 or 6 years old at the time. And he said that adventure, that experience, by far was the most defining experience for him, where he knew that he wanted to study science and that, there was magic to all of this. So it doesn't have to be far afield either. So really that slide should read, take your nature niños on adventures as well, because he also shares a really great tip, and that is, instead of saying, hey, we're going on a hike, or we're going on a walk, or we're going to be outside for 4 hours, whatever. Some children, like, they hear those words and that is like work to them. It doesn't pull them in. Why not use the phrase adventure? Are you ready for today's adventure? Are you ready for today's adventure? I mean, even by just using that phrase, and I think I'll go back and add it to the slide afterwards, but even by using that phrase, we are encouraging that sense of wonder in young children. And quite frankly, an adventure could be as simple as walking or bicycling to your nearby park. Like, what a fun adventure. These days, kids are not out on their bikes as often as they used to be. Like, what about as a family, like biking to your nearest park? What an adventure. Or it might be something like going to the Grand Canyon, or going even further afield. Another easy thing that you can do to kind of get that wonder going, get your wonder on, is set up bird feeders, owl and bee boxes, keep chickens, eat the dandelions. There's so much that's growing in our own backyard that's actually safe for us to harvest. And lots of resources online, so you can, look into those kind of things. And as for the owl box, I have a good friend who I work with. Her husband bought her an owl box like 4 years ago for a wedding gift or something. Not wedding gift, an anniversary gift. And this spring, they finally had some owls in this box, and they have an 8-year-old girl, and they were able to watch this whole drama unfold. Wow, 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 in terms of wonder. So many things we can do that are just really, really simple. So you're still with us, Allison, and there's not many people on the call. But that's okay. This is going to be shared on our page afterwards. So hi, Allison. I've just unmuted you. And Allison is a mama that I worked with when I was at the New Mexico School for the Deaf. And this is her beautiful Leela. And perhaps in a second, you can just center us to start with by speaking to these pictures. And I asked Allison if she would join, because I know that she herself, just as a person, has always found a place for nature and the outdoors. But I also know that since she's had Leela, she has found it to be absolutely crucial for life as mama with Leela. So go ahead and just speak from your heart and tell us a little bit about Leela and whatever you feel like sharing for the next 3, 4, 5 minutes, and we'll see where the conversation takes us.
Sure. Great. Well, thank you. It's great to see you, Sally.
You too.
Yeah, this is my Leela here in the pictures, and my wonderful husband, Robert. These pictures were just taken on Mother's Day. So it was a very special and unique time that we actually left the home. We're in our COVID world right now, and our family has been isolated. So this was extra special. My husband asked me, what did I want for Mother's Day? And I said, to get out of the house and go for an adventure. So we did. Now, I do want to share a little bit about my daughter and our family, and then I'll kind of lead into my top kind of, or how I could kind of say why it's important for us to be in nature as a family. My husband and I both grew up, like Sally was saying, kind of in, or a couple decades ago, but we were outside all the time. Both of us grew up adjacent to forests. We were very blessed to be in the woods all day as kids. So that's kind of how we are as people. We are very much, we've always been out running and biking and hiking and camping, and we knew we would always do that with our child. What we didn't know when our child was born was just the additional challenges that our daughter has. And I think that's important to mention because it adds a whole nother layer of everything wonderful Sally was just mentioning. It seems like it's enhanced even more with our daughter with multiple needs. So Leela's 5 years old now. She has Down syndrome, and she also has chronic kidney disease and hearing loss, some functional vision challenges, challenges with motor planning. So even when she was a little one, I manually moved her body through to learn how to crawl and how to walk. So all of these, congenital heart disease with Down syndrome, all of these kind of reasons, if you want to say, would, as our doctors have told us, have kind of given us an expectation of what to expect with our daughter. And what we've done is flip that on its head by being the type of family we are, the family that goes out, the family that still participates.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I mean, we set our own reality. So that's kind of what nature has allowed us to do. And it's, as a family, given us great confidence that we can do this. Things have to be adapted. Maybe she wasn't able to, climb over logs at an age that other kids of her age, or typically developing peers could, but it doesn't matter. We still have as much joy, and we share it as a family. So I think that's important because it gives us a lot of those kind of icing on the cake with a lot of the benefits. And I was smiling as you were chatting, Sally, because as I was listing all these wonderful reasons why it's important for us, I kept coming back to body, mind, and spirit. So that's kind of how I organized some of my thoughts, and my husband helped me as well. But number one with body, what you were saying, Sally, is cardiovascular benefits, the physical benefits, being in the fresh air, the salubrious benefits of just being in nature. With our daughter, it's even more important. She does have congenital heart disease. She does have neuromuscular challenges. So it's incredible benefits for her body. And what that also gives us is a real functional physical therapy. So if you're a family that has a child that has been in physical therapy or is now, it's needed. If your child does need it, it's absolutely necessary, but it's kind of in isolation, and it's in a bubble, it's in a gym. So as opposed to stepping over a pool noodle in a PT gym, your child's actually stepping over the log or stepping over the roots. And so this, how to get your balance and coordination in a functional way, is one of the most wonderful benefits for the body we see with Leela. That sense of kind of like going through that scrambling and that finding your balance also leads to that second part of the body and then the mind, where Leela's really having to navigate that and feel that inside. And she has to determine kind of this knowing of myself. Do I feel, as Sally was saying, do I feel, safe? Is this exploration of risk that we allow our child to go through? And that really allows her to understand herself better. And that's one of these intangible benefits that I wouldn't have seen before, that is really giving my daughter a huge sense of empowerment. I think as a parent, watching her develop that is probably one of my hugest benefits, is knowing that she can determine in herself, learn to trust her instinct, how to navigate something and to let her do it herself. So that's been a big part of me letting go as we've explored nature. With that, Leela has developed tremendous confidence that has transferred to all dimensions of her personality. And another piece in the mind that Sally was alluding to as well, are this respectful curiosity. And I saw it just yesterday as we were playing outside, which, you know, in our isolation, we're in the backyard hours a day, as she was observing an ant. So she's using functional vision. She's tracking the ant. She couldn't see it, went out of sight, but she wasn't touching. She wasn't trying to do to it. It was more developing observation skills. If she's listening to a bird, she's watching a butterfly, you know, fly over the garden. All of this respectful curiosity, which I think is a wonderful maturity that I've seen her develop. And part of that respectfulness then I feel like leads into the third part for us that we've seen is related to spirit or soul. That respectfulness, now Leela has understood, I am not different than that ant. I am with the ant. I am with the wind. I am with the sun. I am with the soil. I'm with these trees that are giving me shade. I'm with the birds that come back to this nest right by our house every few weeks. And that is a greater understanding of who she is as a being, that she is learning through experience. And so it's a deep knowing of that. Also related, as we've been out all year, which we're blessed to be in New Mexico, we can be outside all year with the right gear, that she understands cycles. So she understands the seasons. She's understanding the day, the sun. She sees the moon. She knows when she's out in the day or when she sees it at night. And with this cycle, particularly season, and Sally and I have chatted about this in the fall last year, she started to notice the leaves were falling and things were crunchy and they're hard and they're dying. And so there's this understanding of death. And my daughter's 5. And so I think maybe as a culture, certainly modern culture, we may steer away from those topics or kind of avoid it or just provide some comfort to it. But allowing her to understand that death is part of a natural cycle. And for her to know that then spring comes and what can come of that. Then you have a new plant and you have flowers and you have fruit. And so it's this kind of exploration, personal exploration of a life cycle that includes death that I think is very healthy. And so it's a full experience of body, mind, and spirit for Leela, but then it is a family as well. We're allowing, you know, ourselves are physically exercising together. We have the shared experience of joy, which as a family, maybe one person's having joy or the child, everybody's happy because the child's happy, but we're sharing the joy. And that's really, I think, sinks deep into us as a family, especially with special needs or extra needs. It's like this, yes, we're just like other families. We can go out, we have this confidence and the shared joy. And then what the final piece as a family is this, is collectively communing with spirit, collectively understanding that we are part of nature. That is something that we couldn't have tried to do. It's more that we go and we visit the same places and we go on these adventures and we have a communion with the river and we have these quiet moments together where we don't need to talk, we don't need to helicopter, we don't need to describe, we just experience that communion together. So it's been an incredible benefit for each of us individually, but collectively as a family, and is something that I know will carry through Leela's life as she grows and she makes her own decisions.
Wow. I just want to say wow. And I wish there were a multitude of people listening to you. And I am already thinking about what we need to do together to do something like this again, because I just had goosebumps the whole time you talked, Allison. You know I adore and love you, and I've always respected your words. Usually I've heard them in an IAP conference room. So I should have expected that this would be no different than absolutely phenomenal. But wow, wow, wow. What a message and what a gift you just shared with us. I particularly appreciate how you wrapped up your message at the end and you were talking about, you know, really the family and how getting outdoors, and even if it's just quiet time. I mean, for some families, it might not be going to the bosque, which is where you're clearly at, or the forest. For me, it might be going to a park and just enjoying a picnic together, you know, with the sun on your back. It could be that simple. but what a wonderful thing to be doing as a family. So I'm going to invite you to answer one more question for me, and that is, just put you on the spot here. We are hoping through our Nature Niños work to really sort of impact through this series, but just the work that we're doing in general, to really impact families that maybe didn't grow up with nature like you and I, maybe have some fears around it, you know, what might be out there in the woods, so to speak. Maybe have no idea where to start. Like, oh yeah, you know, hiking sounds like a cool thing, but like, what does that even look like? I remember one of our NMSD mamas from, you know, before Leela's generation, reached out to me once and said, I always wanted to go hiking. Like, I don't know how. And I took her and her boys hiking for the first time. And now they do it like all the time, because in her mind, the way she grew up, there was a disconnect, you know, like this was something that somebody else, other people did. And she didn't realize that it really could be as simple as just making sure you have shoes that lace up. You don't even need hiking boots, you know, and bringing a bottle of water and a few provisions with you. So I invite you, as we kind of get close to wrapping up this first module, what would be some words of advice that you would say to parents who maybe have a special needs child too and are thinking, there's no way like I could take my child who has autism and makes noises outdoors, you know, whatever comes to your mind for that parent who isn't maybe as naturally, excuse the pun, isn't as naturally nature connected as you and I are.
I would say just start with your backyard. Start with your patio. Start with your front porch. Um, I can relate to that. I have a niece in New York City right now who's isolated in an apartment with no green space, and their family is not out nature oriented, and so we're trying to support them in some creative ways. So we've been telling them, you know, hey, why don't you just, you know, go into your front porch area. And that's certainly what I did with Leela. Now she, like I mentioned, she has had a lot of physical gross motor delays. So we weren't always able to hike with her. And we started with our front patio, and I would set up like a large plastic pool or something. Then we'd bring in some sticks and bring in some rocks and just kind of using what you have at home. I think if you start there, it will develop some confidence in yourself as a parent, and then also kind of let your child start exploring some of those things more naturally with sticks and rocks in more of a controlled space. Now in New Mexico, we have some things to look out for when you do go out, and we're in our backyard now. We're actually not leaving the home to go to parks and to the bosque and such. So, you know, it is important to make sure that you have some cactus, you know, where they are, and like, you know, black widows, we know where they are. We've, you know, moved them, relocated them and such. So I think if you're just starting and that kind of is intimidating, just start with a controlled area, a small area in your front porch or in the backyard. And I think that, you know, you can do it as easy, like you're saying, if you've got sneakers, you can do it. I think there's also a misconception that you do need a ton of gear and all kinds of specialty things. But to get started, just put on sneakers and socks and, you know, a hat and some water. But I think it's trying to take it simple, step by step. Just get outside. Just go outside. That's the start.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. And I can't wait until post-COVID so we could take a bosque walk.
Yes.
And catch up. And I will talk to the Nature Niños, the NWF people, because I kind of think that there might be an audience, a larger audience that needs to hear your beautiful messages. And give Leela a hug, please.
I will.
Yeah.
She's out playing in her mud pit right now. We built a mud pit in the backyard.
I saw that picture, and I'll probably, with your permission, in next week's module is gardening. But I can't remember when we're doing one like backyard design on a dime. So it's sort of the idea of like how to bring in, you know, nature, but also simple things like that, like creating a little mud pit. So with your permission, I might use that picture that you sent me when we do that module. And you're welcome to stay. I think I'm just gonna kind of wrap this up with the last few slides, but
Sure.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Allison, I appreciate
Yeah.
it. I totally appreciate it. Awesome. Well, I had one other mama who is a mama from Soul Forest School, but I'm going to leave it with Allison because she so beautifully and succinctly shared everything. And I also was having a little bit of a problem linking in Mama Misty's video. She sent me a little video. I will see if that can be made available somehow on the link. But her boys come to Soul Forest School, and she started off just sending the older one day a week, and it really sort of transformed their lives. Her older boy has some sensory issues as well, and she found the forest to be really, really comforting and calming. So the next thing you know, prior to the COVID situation, both of her boys were coming to us 3 days a week. So she's just kind of talking about how being involved in forest school really sort of impacted the way she parents going forward. So that's a little bit about Mama Misty. These are the resources from today's module. I really recommend that people listen to this TED Talk from Scott Sampson. He really is very, very, he's an amazing speaker. And he really sort of elaborates on the new, the notice, engage, and wonder, and just delivers it in such a captivating way. And then the facts that I shared at the beginning of the talk were all from these two primary documents. This is my boy Odin now. The picture on the right in the garden was literally yesterday. We were finally getting some of our seed starts in. And the picture on the left is last weekend. We went up to Santa Fe to see the aspens at the very top of the mountain for Mother's Day. And we met up with one of my best friends and her daughter, Olive, who Odin and Olive have been friends since they were 3. So they got a big old stick and they physically distance hiked while Mama and I hung out. So, you know, it gets harder. I will say, parents, not for everyone, but my experience, it has been harder to get Odin out as he's older. But I'm just trusting what I know the research tells us, you know, and how we sort of set the stage those first 5 or 6 years, whether it's around food or just routines or, you know, just our attachments. And in this case, nature, that for a lot of kids, they'll wrap back around to that, you know, and he's kind of at that age as an almost 17-year-old where I've got to sort of twist his arm to get him outside. He'd rather be on a screen or chatting with his friends. But when he is outside, he will speak quite easily to how it feeds his soul still. So it's a wonderful gift to give to our kids as they're growing up. I don't think we have really many people joining us right now. I don't know if Sarah's still listening, but you know, if either one of you have any comments or questions. I'm thinking probably not. Hopefully the next module will have we did have 20 people registered today, but it's hard with this Zoom world to kind of figure out times and what have you that really work for parents. So I'm not going to be discouraged. We'll get this up and we'll share it, and you know, hope that others will join us next time. So this is a little bit about me, my contact information, and I think that's it for today. So thanks again, Allison, for joining, and for Sarah for hanging on if you're still there. Be well, everybody, okay?
Thank you. You too, Sally.
Be well.
Bye.
May the forest be with you.
Likewise.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.